And I want to bring Jamie in because Jamie's actually got a product, and I know he's interested in some of this legal conversation as well. Because he's got a product where he's trying to get folks to actually have more access to their rights and their ways of putting things out. I'm probably not describing it in the best way, Jamie. So describe what your product is and what you've got going on, because I know that you're trying to give the voice to the musicians and to some of the others. So Jamie, share with us what you've got going on.
Well, I'm not sure that I actually had the idea or if the idea had me. It's one of the few times in my life I've had a 5-minute conversation with myself alone, just convincing myself, could this possibly be, And what I came across was somewhat of a mental disconnect in the music industry as far as the manufacturers go, who came out with all the different forms of media and the players that we use to listen to them. So I think this is why it never dawned on people to create it. But what I noticed was the price of MP3 players just tanking. When the smartphone came out, there's 2.7 billion smartphone users today. So, the MP3 players are kind of obsolete. And so what I realized was that 1/8-inch jack, 3.5 millimeter jack is an output lying out like in the Sony Walkman. That's the first time I had it, and the paths that were created to replicate music for your own enjoyment. I mean, right down to listening to the radio and hitting play and record on your boombox, you know what I mean? So the industry was fully aware of some of the piracy going on. So what I ended up arriving at is that if I could come up with an MP3 player that had the brains to decipher which components and systems to pair with, and be able to selectively pair with only headphones, or a car stereo, or some other devices out there, Bluetooth speakers that don't provide this path, that I was onto something. So that's when I started working with some of the Bluetooth engineers and decided to go ahead and create this patent. The reason that it works is because manufacturers who make their devices, if they're going to work within a Bluetooth platform, they have to register the frequencies and the identification numbers of the product that they're making. This allows us to approach a company like Logitech, prime example of someone who might make some earbuds, they might make some standalone Bluetooth speakers, but lo and behold, they also make a Bluetooth adapter that will just take my signal and turn it into a female out that you can plug in a cord and go straight into your computer, and there you go. So, it gives us the leverage to say to them, hey, give us all your numbers. I mean, they're public knowledge, but there's other identifiers that we can use as well to make it an easier process of pairing and filtering out the items we don't want to pair with. So companies can work with us and give us the information we need to pair with their products that are posing no threat for piracy, and then we can filter out the ones that do. They can still go ahead and sell those products, it's just that it's not going to work with ours. And I've reached out to Beats. I haven't heard back from them yet. I thought they're a perfect company to come out with something that would pair with their products and maybe set the industry trend that people would follow. One of the big hurdles that we're up against here is the management and the industry trend towards digital markets and now, virtual reality coming down the pike. And what I found over the course of 2 years is that I could hardly find an artist who wouldn't get excited about this. They're all behind it 100%. And when I thought of the idea, I was so excited, and I couldn't believe it myself. I wanted to go to the rooftops and shout it off, thinking the whole world would just embrace me with, where you been all our life, And what I found was just the opposite. So one of the first people I talked to happened to be a lawyer that helped Madonna or worked with Madonna on her 360 deal. Through this conversation, he ended up asking me, why would anybody want to carry around 20 different things when they got 20,000 at their fingertips? I wasn't prepared for this conversation. So to have that thrown in my face right off the bat, I was like, who cares? Who cares what you want? Nobody has a right to anybody else's works for free. And that's just the facts of the matter. I don't care what kind of generations have, gone past already thinking they have a right to free music. They don't. The trend is the digital markets, and there's people who have invested so heavily into them that they don't really want to go back into physical goods. Even one of the upper management execs at Warner flat out said that they probably wouldn't be interested in going back into physical goods. They're really going into this virtual reality thing.
Hey, Jamie, if I could just interrupt you really quickly.
Sure,
Everything,
I can go on
I appreciate the conversation, but I want to come back to Mark because he actually raises an interesting question, which is that we've gone from the physical platform, and like I said, you're the lawyer in the house and everything, and to the more digital world. And a lot of times you do have access to those things. I know even on some shows that I've been part of, you can grab something from YouTube, and yeah, they'll send you the lovely YouTube warning, but I don't know how much enforcement they really do. They just send you the lovely warning about the fact that you used the YouTube track or this track or that track. So because of the flexibility of digital stuff and things of that nature, what do you tell folks about that? Because there is that whole concept of what's going on digitally and having greater access. I think that's what Jamie's referring to. And it's harder to track. It's harder to actually stop people from doing things along those lines.
Not sure I understand your question, but what we find is once you release something on the internet, it is copied both lawfully and unlawfully, and you have to assume that that's going to happen. Even if you're a beginning artist, let's just call it that, and
Right.
you have a record on, and you've released it on Spotify and Apple and whatever, and the dollar amount that you get paid for each play is extremely low. It's thousandths of a cent. And so that's why Madonna had a 360 deal, because the record companies have recognized that the value isn't just in the record anymore. The record deal is the engine that pulls the train, and so without a record deal, it's very hard to get seen. But publishing and touring pre-COVID and merchandise is where revenue comes from. The streaming business or the live concert business is booming, and that's where a lot of people are moving towards so that they can make some money. YouTube has something called Content ID, and there is a major lawsuit pending about it right now because by the way they work it, only if you are a big publisher or a big record company are you eligible for Content ID. And then what they do is they give you a choice. You can cause a video which uses your music to come down, or you can monetize it so that YouTube can put ads against it. But that only applies to those who are eligible for Content ID. The challenge is there are many people who are not eligible for Content ID, and therefore their material isn't policed. And so there's a lawsuit suggesting that YouTube is attempting to change the law by creating Content ID and only serving the big people. It's insanely complicated. I actually was working at Prodigy, an old online service in the late 1990s, and I was one of the people that drafted the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. I testified before Congress on it and had a big hand in doing that. And what we didn't anticipate is the phony counter notices that come about. So if I represent a publisher and I see someone is infringing my client's work, I send a notice and takedown to YouTube. It comes down, and then the user who has infringed my client's copyright sends back a phony counter notice that says, oh no, Jacobsen's client doesn't own it, I do, and YouTube then puts it back up, and it is impossible for my client to take it down without filing a full-blown lawsuit.
What are some of the other issues that you found as a lawyer that folks need to be aware of? Or even like maybe our comedian friend, like I said, she's definitely done a lot in the field and has done, as best I can tell, what she's supposed to do. But I do find a lot of folks that are not aware of what they should be doing. So what are some things that you would automatically ask an artist to know from a legal perspective before they even start doing shows or being involved?
You're asking me or 2Q?
Yeah, Mr. Jacobsen.
Well, I'd want to make sure that if it's a songwriter, I think it's very important that they register their songs at one of the performing rights societies correctly, that they have what we call split sheets. So if the four of us work together on a song, we might split the song equally, or Mark, you might get 50% of the song and we might split the rest equally, or something like that. But signing a sheet like that makes it entirely appropriate for everyone. Plus, at the performing rights societies, there are two sets of income. There's the writer's share and the publisher's share. And you have to register for both to get both. Lots of people just register their writer's share and don't register the publisher's share, which means they're leaving 50% of the money on the table. Also, registering at BMI or ASCAP is not the end. It's only the beginning. I can get really technical, but performance is only one part of the publishing income. On recordings, it's very much the same way. You have to make sure everyone who works on your recording has signed a contract. And if you're the artist, you own the rights. I can't tell you how many times artists have hired me and said the studio won't give me my tracks, and I paid them. And then the studio extorts a pretty high fee for letting them go. It's routine for that to happen. You have to be careful going in. People's creative work is important to them. It's hard.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And I want to hear both of you, well, everybody, how, because I remember there was a time that piracy was a big complaint around the industry, particularly around music. I imagine around comedy as well. I mean, I haven't heard as much lately, so I'm thinking that you must have kind of put some rules into effect. But it seems that that's kind of what Jaime's product is trying to do, is that he's still seeing some folks that are doing this kind of piracy stuff. So how much of an issue is piracy of music and piracy of content, and with something like Jaime's product help alleviate it? So what are your thoughts on that? Because it's definitely, I'm just not kind of trying to get a feel as to whether it's still a major issue. Because I remember that definitely early on in the age of the internet, we heard all kinds of talks about it. And of course, it came up even in congressional hearings.
Well, I'll let Jaime answer.
Wonderful. Well, there's still very much alive today, this music piracy. There has been efforts made online, to stop the ripping. And, as you might have heard in some of the hearings and some of the stuff that's going on recently, there's methods and tactics that could be used and have been there for years, and they're not using them. You know what I mean? So I think some legislation might be in order, that requires them to do some of these things. My product doesn't seek to kill digital markets. Okay, people enjoy having these things at their fingertips, and I'm not here to take that away. What I'm here to do is to give artists a choice and to create leverage for them in these digital markets. If Ted Nugent, who I love dearly, was to walk in and demand more money in digital markets for his new album coming out, I'm not sure how much leverage he'd have even with my product. But if Bruno Mars walks in the door and says, I'm not going to give you all even one song if you don't give me the price I want, right? Now he's got something. Right now, artists got nothing. They got a CD that anybody can rip. There's no protection at all. I myself am seeking legislation, and I've already reached out to the Trump administration, my local state representatives, not to pass legislation that requires you buy my product, but legislation that says, hey, you have to use whatever technology is available out there, to protect your client. And you don't have to use this technology, but you have to have something at least as equally effective. You know what I mean? So for a label or a anybody to contract an artist and take on the responsibility of protecting their music, representing their music and their livelihood, to me, owes it to that artist to protect his music in any way necessary. Otherwise, it's a crime. I got a buddy who got on board with this right away. His name's James Boggs, and I don't have all his stuff memorized, but I'll tell you, this is what he told me today. He's got 300 songs on YouTube. And over the course of the years, he had his own label with a bunch of bands underneath him. And, he decided to release 2 of the albums to digital markets. And after tracking those 2 releases, he had 2 million downloads over the course of 15 years. And he's gotten $2,000. And so, he's saying that the money's not there for the artist. You know, the whole reason I even came across this idea I had was because after my music career neared its end at 30, I realized I was getting pretty old, and if I hadn't gotten some traction by now, it might not happen. I started focusing on my son and got him the recording equipment I never had and the gear that I never had, and tried to get him in the position to make a demo. And he's a very talented young man. So after some months went by, and I'm saying, well, where are my results here? I want 3 songs. You know, he comes over and he plays me some stuff, and here I see that it's on YouTube. So here he is already putting his music out there, uncopywritten, you know, and unprotected. And I called him on it, you know. You know, I guess I had the investment into the thing. I'm like, what are you doing, you know? And he says, Pops, get with the times, man. Nobody makes money off of music anymore. It's all done off of live, you know, performances and merch. He left. I was devastated. I sat there wondering, how in the hell did we get to this? You know, where an artist doesn't even care to protect his music because he knows it's just no point anyway. Well, I think that, you know, that's a bit extreme, and I'm sure there's plenty of artists out there who still go through the motions of protecting their works before they release it.
Yeah, I want to hear from Mr. Jacobsen, because one of the things I remember is part of the reason that Prince went with that whole symbol thing was because he was running into some of these same issues, and that was
now. I'll interrupt here, but the Prince thing, you know, just last week or so, I saw that there was a blurb about how the Prince estate was considering releasing his entire catalog to TikTok, and I personally wrote them a message saying, "Stop," you know. That, you know, we'll be coming out with this device within a year or two that will protect all of his music, you know, don't do this. And then shortly after, this whole banning thing by India, and I'm not sure whether it's going to follow through here in the States or not as far as banning TikTok. But, you know, I just urge anybody who's, you know, given up and feel hopeless about their music, they need to get on board with this. And it's a grassroots movement. The only people that want it are really, truly the artists themselves. But the Prince thing definitely alarmed me, and I was like, whoa, you know, I'm not sure he would like that very much.
So, Mr. Jacobsen, I was asking you about the Prince thing, and also just about, I remember that was a big issue, and part of the reason that he did kind of like switch to the symbol and everything was because he was feeling that the music industry was taking advantage of him, so he wanted to kind of put his own music out there under his control. So, are you finding more and more artists that are wanting to do that are the big artists?
No. If you look at the Billboard charts, the top 200 songs or albums or what have you, the vast majority of them have been released by the major record labels. There are a few exceptions. There are always exceptions. For a long time, I was a manager, and we believed in self-releasing. The challenge with that back in the day when I used to do that is we estimated the cost of getting to a #1 album through streaming and all that was between $500,000 and $1 million. Most artists don't have that money. If they do, they've raised it from somebody else, and so then there's a sharing of the revenue with that company, and so it gets very, very complicated. The challenge is in securing plays and recognition. It goes back to what Too Cute and I were talking about before. If you put butts in the seats in the beginning, you're well on your way. And that's how people are found. You got to play out in the clubs. You got to be found. You got to be exposed that way. I think that, Jaime, while I appreciate all that you're saying about protecting the works, because that's how I make my living, I sort of feel like you're Mickey Mouse in the Fantasia, where the water keeps coming and he's trying to get out by a bucket at a time. It's impossible. Yes, songs are released on YouTube. Yes, you can copyright them afterwards. Yes, you can register on BMI afterwards. And yes, you can make money from it. It's just that the consumer has driven this industry away from the purchase and owning of records and tracks and downloads. The iPod is gone to the point where everything is available in the cloud, and it's an access business, not an ownership business. And once that model is accepted, it will start to be more clear how one makes one money.
So in response to Mark's suggestion of being Mickey Mouse and Fantasia, it's still a real problem. And I just learned today that out of if you have a top 40 song on the charts, this peer-to-peer sites that have evolved now, instead of like one person uploading it to the site, BitTorrent or Napster or something like that, and then another person downloading it, now they can just send it direct to each other peer-to-peer. Current stats are around 8,000 shares a week, and that's money lost. You know what I mean? Dark Side of the Moon was downloaded 187,000 times in June alone. And so, to me, what in a perfect world, artists would come out on a medium that's protected, unlike the CD and anything else. So I don't care if it's mine. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's something that can fit in your shirt pocket or wears 14 pounds. Okay, the world's not going to go on without new music. So I don't care if people want to carry stuff around or don't. In a perfect world, the artist would have the protection to release their music out on this device and then release 1 to 3 songs, just like they always have, to radio and digital markets. So that's why I'm saying it's not really a threat to digital markets as far as their livelihood, because the people who don't want to buy a full album and they just like the 3 songs, they'll be happy to download, and there'll be nothing changed. But what needs to take place is the artist having the option to not go to the digital markets and be able to leverage a better price. Release the rest of the songs off that album over the course of a year or 2 until the next one comes out. Makes perfect sense to me, at least, that they should have some control over the sale and distribution of their product in order to maintain its market value and leverage in areas like those digital markets. And so that's kind of the whole thing. And in the end, lately I've been considering about offering this up to the artists themselves, creating some type of public organization that houses the IP, so that it's not this kind of power isn't held by just one organization or company. I'm wondering about a public offering on this, so I'm going to research into that. The other benefit of this thing is that it offers a better sound quality, because we're not going to use up all of the memory space for 500 songs. We can offer a better file format with a lossless file. And maybe the average ear might not be able to tell much of a difference, but the good trained ears out there who enjoy music will definitely be able to tell the difference. It's the closest thing to analog you can get in a digital form. And plus it works in a cave, right? Bad weather, big apartment buildings in the basement, it works.
Makes a lot of sense.
Up 30% since the coronavirus is this whole being quarantined at home or whatever. So I've been busy trying to spread the word here. I appreciate any help that's out there. I can't say that I'm convinced myself. I'd like to be. I know early on I again experienced a trend in the market that wasn't embracing it, other than artists. And so, the jury's still out in a sense. I followed through with the patent expenses because the heart of that technology could be used in other sectors, of industry. So it's not just this device that I needed to protect. But there has to be, someone has to demonstrate a need for this, and I guess that's why I'm here, and I'm gonna continue onward trying to find out, what the public opinion is on this. But the artists, to me, are the ones that really matter as far as, if I'm making a mountain out of a molehill and there really isn't the need for this, then we need to come to that understanding. I haven't seen it yet. To me, again, I feel it should be a harmonious relationship between digital markets and whatever they come out on, the whole release. So that's the direction I'm going, and I thank you guys for hearing me out. But everybody knows what the right thing is when it comes to this piracy thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be having this debate. I mean, you know, I don't need to sit here. I could come up with a bunch of figures to try to combat the opinions of entertainment lawyers like Mark. But in the end, all I have to say is, who cares? Who cares what they want? Who cares what management wants? Who cares what the consumer wants? The artists need to protect themselves and get paid for what they do. And you know, I hope the world sees the value in that.
Jaime, tell folks how they can reach you. They've heard a lot about the product and what you're trying to do. So if they want to help you with what you're doing, how can folks reach you that are listening and might want to help you with this endeavor?
Well, Production Pal, one word, at Gmail is my email address. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. The website, I hadn't gone and gotten a domain for this exactly. I have another domain that I'm pushing, another startup, but so I kind of tacked it onto that. It's really super long, but it's you just enter in audioprotectiondevice.thepricepatrol.com.